You know, everything old is new again. Crazy quilting, well, it's been around for a long time. So your handout today gives you instructions to make this really cool block keeper. We're going to be doing some crazy piecing to make a cover for it, and some bobbin work to really make that crazy piecing stand out. The Vesta, well, it's going to be a great machine for doing crazy piecing, bobbin work. Oh my gosh, we have a lot to cover. I'm Cathy, and this is Sewing Tech Talk. So, for today's project, in your handout, I have instructions for a block keeper, and we're going to explore some crazy piecing and some bobbin work. This is my bobbin keeper. Block keeper. This is my block keeper, and I use it to store quilts that I'm in progress of. This happens to have an embroidered front, but these are really convenient because you can keep the blocks as you're working on a project, and even if they're not pieced together, it holds all the parts and pieces together on the little felt pages. So look for your handout, and the instructions for this size block keeper are in there, and it's a really fun project if you're giving gifts for like your quilt guild or your quilting friends. Doesn't take a lot of supplies. I use just corrugated cardboard from a cardboard box, some cereal weight cardboard, some batting. Of course, we're going to make the covers for it, and just some white glue. So really simple, very inexpensive project to make, and you get to practice some fun stuff. So now, crazy piecing is really kind of fun, and it really uses up your scrap bin. All you basically need is a base fabric, which could be, it could just be paper. It could be some stabilizer. This is deli paper. This is no-show mesh stabilizer. And if your piece isn't big enough, you can totally piece together your piece. You can see I've taken 2 pieces of a fabric, and I've even sewed some no-show mesh in the middle. So as long, it's never going to be seen, as long as it keeps the back of these crazy mixed up pieces stable, then it's going to work great. So let's start piecing. It's a pretty simple sew and flip process. So start, because you want it to look kind of wacky, right? You want to start with like a 5-sided piece, and the sides can be completely different. It doesn't have to be a perfect pentagon or anything like that. In fact, you kind of don't want it to be. Could you start with a square or a triangle? Sure, and that would look kind of fun, and I've seen lots of quilts done that way. But for a more of a crazy piece look, do like a 5-sided polygon. It can be put anywhere on your base fabric. I have marked out the outside edge of where I need to cover to make this block keeper. I think it's a 13-inch square. So mark that out because you want to keep piecing forever. And I made the piece bigger, obviously, so I can, cut away what I don't like. Basically, all that you do is you set up your machine just for a straight stitch. I'm going to pick my pentagon, put it somewhere. Take chunks of fabric or strips of fabric or something. They could coordinate, they don't have to. Take it, put it on there. I'm going to put it right sides down, right sides together. Let me get this out of the way. I've set up my machine just with my basic sewing foot, and I'm going to bring it on up. I'm using the Ultra T feet. I've used those for all my sewing now that I have them. And what you're basically going to do is just sew along here, and then we're going to flip that open. It's a really simple process. So let's just sew along here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'd slowed down my machine, and I have the speed control up here. We can go this pretty fast. When I'm done with that piece, I'm just going to touch the scissors on the machine. Now, it is kind of handy to have an iron nearby, because what we're going to do is we're going to take this piece and we are going to flip it on out. Notice it's a triangle I'm putting onto the polygon. So there we go. And you're going to see that you kind of want this to kind of be nice and flat. You can iron it as you go. You can take a little wooden iron to put it down. Now the next piece, you can pick any side to put it on. This is what's crazy about the whole thing. And what you want to do is you want to cover that edge This piece looks like it might work. Yes, it will. And I'm just going to sew along there and flip it on out. You want it to extend beyond the piece because you're going to have some cutaways, some scraps. The scraps you can totally use later. So let's see, let's lower that presser foot. Now the seam can be a 1/4 inch, it could be whatever works for you. That's the fun of this. You're kind of putting fun, different colors and combinations of fabrics together. And what the real fun is we're going to bring all these looks together when we do our decorative stitching and our bobbin work. Because that's what they did with real crazy quilting back in the day. So let's sew this one piece on and I'll show you how that looks. Okay, so there's my next piece. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it on out. And I'm going to lay it here so that you can see. I'm going to hold it up so that you can see it. All right, so there's my next piece on there. Basically, what I would do is I would just sew my next piece on here or here or here. You just keep going, sewing and flipping until you get to the very, very end, covering your whole piece. Okay? Now, I started another piece because I want to show you how fun it can look when you have a bunch of different wacko fabrics put together. So oh, and here's my fabric. Here's my scrap pile for this one. They don't have to coordinate, but you know, you can have a softer look, a more vibrant look. Speaking of a more vibrant look, I have these fun fabrics and I didn't know what to do with them. You can actually use like old blocks with this. Here's a scrap block from a quilt that I made. Here's some fun cat fabrics that I'd collected. We're going to sew a little bit on this and do some bobbin work. You may even have some old blocks. Now this block is old enough to go to college. I bet you can tell by looking at the looking at the fabrics. It's when I first started to piece I made this, and it's never gone into anything. I think maybe it needs to go into something. So gather a whole bunch of fabrics. And let me show you this one last piece on this, and then we'll do a little bit of bobbin work. So here's my last little piece going on there. And I hope you can see I started a little bit of bobbin work, but all these different pieces go on there, and you're just covering, in this case, a piece of deli paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this last piece, my little kitties with sunglasses, lay it across there. I'm just going to sew along this seam right here and flip it out. All right. Now, it's gone beyond that deli paper. That's not a problem. I'm going to trim that a little bit later. And like I said, if I was using my little piece of leftover quilt block, I could put that over here. And because it's going kind of wacky this way, I get all kinds of different looks. So just cover a piece of paper or fabric with a whole bunch of different stuff. Now, your design challenge, and what it's really fun, is let's pull this together with some different decorative stitching. I'm using the Baby Lock Vesta today, and it has a whole ton of all kinds of different decorative stitches. You don't have to use a lot of the fancy ones. In fact, when we do our bobbin work, we're going to want a fairly simple decorative stitch, but let's start out with a nice little decorative stitch. So what you're going to do, bring this up so that you can see it. Once you get everything together, this is my bobbin work, we'll do a little bit more of that. What you can do is you can do a decorative stitch right along that seam line, and it can really bring these fabrics together and add all kinds of fun, different, you know, interest and three-dimensionality to your crazy quilt. It's what makes the crazy quilt a crazy quilt. So let's thread up so we're using just a regular decorative stitch. What I'm going to do is take my piecing thread on out, and I'm going to change over to a bobbin that's going to match my thread. I'm going to be using some black thread, and I'm going to be using some Decorative thread. Decora is a 12 weight thread, and it's a little bit thicker than your regular thread. You can use embroidery thread and use an embroidery bobbin in there. But this Decora thread adds a little bit of extra oomph because it's a 12 weight thread. Now Decora, if you buy the case, it actually comes with a set of needles. You want to use a larger needle for your 12 weight thread, and it actually comes with needles that are 90 weight that accommodates this thread. It's just a little bit thicker. So I'm going to thread on up with it. I have my bigger needle in there, and I'm just threading up just as if I would be sewing. The needle threader works great. Hold on, let's lower that pressure foot. All right, so now we're ready to go. All I need to do is pick a decorative stitch. And there's tons of different decorative stitches that I can use on the Baby Lock Vesta. To access those, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the sewing menu, and I'm just going to pick a fun stitch. Let's see what we have under tab number 3. Oh, this looks like a really pretty one. Now, if I want to adjust this stitch, remember I'm using a little bit thicker thread. So let's make this stitch just a little bit bigger. We can come up here and we can say, I want it as wide as I got. And what you see is what you get, which is pretty cool. And that's just a little bit bigger of a stitch. Now I have a bigger needle. I have a bigger, sexier thread in there. Let's just sew across this seam line. Oh, I forgot. I'm going to change over to the in foot, which is the recommended foot for doing a decorative stitch. And the Ultra T foot set comes with an in foot. Now, I'm just going to stitch along this right here, and it's not going to be as big as that bobbin work we're going to do in a few minutes, but it should look like a really pretty stitch. Take your thread, bring it under your foot, and let's go. Now, when I'm done, I can use my scissors, but quite frankly, this is a bigger thread, so I'm going to pull it around to the back. So I'm just going to do needle up, and I'm just going to pull my fabric away and just clip those threads. Now what I can do, and I have my needle stored here so that you can see, is I can just take a large-eyed needle and pull that thread to the back. And it's just going to be in the back of my quilt. No one's ever going to see it, but it just kind of finishes this stitch off really, really nice. Now, let's do some pretty fun stuff. Let's do some bobbin work. And what is bobbin work? Well, what bobbin work is when you have a thread that's too thick to go through the eye of the needle. Even that size 90 needle that I used with the Decora thread, it's just too big with that. So I'm going to use a couple different things that you may not think that you can sew with on your machine. I'm going to use a 8 weight Decora, which is much thicker than a 12. As thread numbers go down, the thread gets bigger. Go figure. And I'm going to use some silk ribbon to get a really kind of fun effect. So yes, you can sew with silk ribbon. Who knew? Well, I'm not using silk. I'm using a silk. Well, I'll show you in a second. So let's switch over and let's do some bobbin work. Now, one thing we need to make sure we do is I am going to, of course, take out what I've used before. This is my 12 weight. I'm going to use my, where is it? I'm going to use my 8 weight, and I'm going to hold it up, and you can see that this is a much, much thicker thread than this 12 weight. Where's my 12 weight? You can see, hold on, where is it? Oh, a much, much thicker thread. And it really can only work in the bobbin. So what I did is I took it and I took an empty bobbin and I hand wound it onto the bobbin. And we're going to put this in the bobbin case, but we're not going to thread it like usual. When we thread a machine with the bobbin, we have a quick set bobbin on the Baby Lock Vesta. What we do is we put our bobbin in, we pull it through the bobbin tensioner, use the trim, and then we're good to go. But we're going to totally bypass this bobbin tensioner. That's the tension spring, and we're not going to use it. So basically, all you do is you take your hand wound bobbin, you put it in as if you were going to use that, but you just let that thread hang out. And we're going to pull it up, and it's not going to go into that tension spring at all. Now, what I want to use is I want to use some matching thread on the top, because in case it shows on the other side, I don't want it to look like a funny color. So I'm just going to thread the top with a matching all-purpose thread. Put my infoot back on. Now, what I want to do is I want to pull that bobbin thread up. So I'm just going to hold my top thread, do a needle down, needle back up again, and it's going to pop that thread up. Swipe my scissors underneath, and now that thread is ready to go. It doesn't look like it is, but it is. So when you've threaded your machine correctly for basic sewing, the thread is going to come over across the top of the bobbin just like that. It doesn't do that when you're not using the bobbin tension spring. So put your bobbin cover back on, and we're ready to go, except for let's pick a stitch. Well, you know, I bet you I could use that stitch I just used, and we could compare the two and see what they look like. Isn't that a good idea? So, okay, so here we go. We're using the very same stitch. I'm going to slow my machine down because, you know, I'm asking it to do something a little bit different. And instead of sewing on the top like this one, we're going to sew from the back side because we want the bobbin to show. So let's turn it over. Let's see, where are we going to sew? Let's just sew right along here. Now I'm on the back side, and what I am using is I'm using that seam that I stitched just as a guideline, and I can't see the right side of the fabric. So one thing I want to do is when I lower my presser foot, I want to make sure that that thread is coming out towards the back. Check. And I'm going to sew a little bit slower because, like I said, I'm doing something a little bit different. So we're going to sew from here to here. Let's sew that very same stitch and see what we get. Okay, I came to the end. Now's the time to tell. We're going to turn it over and see what it looks like between a 12 weight and an 8 weight. There's the top side. It looks just like that one. Oh my goodness! It looks like I put a really pretty braid in there. Isn't that pretty? And you can imagine I could do that with like a variegated thread or a metallic thread. Oh, that looks so pretty. And different stitches are going to give you a different effect. Different weights are going to give you a different effect. Now let's try something really unusual. Let's use some silk ribbon. We're going to have to reset up the machine. Here is my ribbon, And I must like yellow because I have a whole bunch of it. This is not silk ribbon. It's a what is it called? A synthetic silk ribbon. When you're using ribbon in the bobbin of your machine, you want a really soft ribbon. It can't be that, there's some really inexpensive thin ribbon out there, but it's really just too stiff. So what I want is this nice soft ribbon to get the effect that I want to get. So we're going to change it over. Once again, I'm going to load in my bobbin the same way that I did. I hand wound my bobbin with my silk ribbon. I'm going to put it in there. Now, I want a matching thread on the top because if this top thread shows, I want to make sure it matches. So let's put some yellow in and let's pick a fun stitch. Now you remember the drill. All I really need to do is take this top thread, do a needle down and a needle back up again, and it's going to pull that thread, that ribbon up to the top. I'm going to pull it under the foot just like that. We're also going to sew on the back of our back of our crazy quilt. And where should we sew this time? Well, maybe let's come right along in here. Let me take my large-eyed needle out of the way. Now let's pick a different stitch. I want something fairly simple for this one. So let's see, maybe I'll do a serpentine. I think that would be very pretty. So I'm just going to go over to that stitch. There it is. There's that serpentine. And I can change it a little bit. I want it maybe a little bit closer together. Remember, what you see is what you get. And let's make it wider. That looks kind of pretty. Now, here I go. Now, I don't really have to change anything else. I can do a test and see. If it doesn't look like it's coming out, I may want to increase the top tension, which is that all-purpose thread. I'm just going to give it a shot. I think it's going to be okay. So here we go. I want that ribbon to come out towards the back. I'm going to pull our fabric underneath there, and I'm going to go right along here. Lower my presser foot. And get everything out of the way. Let's go. Now, as I'm stitching the first couple stitches, it looks like it's kind of close together. Let's lengthen that stitch. And I think that might look a little bit better. I've come to the end of my section, do my needle up, lift my presser foot. I'm going to clip that top thread. It's kind of hard to see in the yellow, but I think you'll definitely see the ribbon. That's kind of pretty. Now, I could come back over it and I could do another color ribbon. I could stack my stitches. I could do some stitches right along here. I could have individual stitches coming out of there. Let me show you one more thing before I'm going to set you free. If you're doing some of these decorative stitches, you can do a single unit and the machine will stop right after that. Let me show you how to set up the Vesta for that. So if I wanted to do a single unit, let's find a fun little decorative stitch. Let's see, let's go through. There's a whole bunch of them on the Vesta. Maybe that. Now that looks like a fun little stitch, right? But what if I did individual units coming out from another stitch? So let's come in here. Whoops, that's not what I want. I want to come down here. Now I want to tell the machine, I'm not repeating this. I just want one unit. So when I touch the single star, I'm going to get a single unit just like that. And I can even have it large or I can have it small. And I can do just individual units coming out. I'm going to put that 12-way thread back in, and I'm just going to have fun stacking stitches, and playing with all my decorative stitches, and quite frankly, all my fun decorative threads as well. So crazy piecing is pretty easy, but you really make it shine when you come in and you use some fun decorative stitches. Don't forget, Baby Lock Vesta is also an embroidery machine. I could come in here and I could do little individual embroideries as well and really make this crazy quilt, well, kind of pretty. Right now it's just fun, but I think we could do more. I'm just saying, don't go down a rabbit hole, because I think you would enjoy doing this process. Just keep going. Remember, sometime you have to stop. You can't just keep embellishing all the time. The Baby Lock Vesta can do so much. Decorative stitches, embroidery. I'm going to send it off to George. He's going to tell you a little bit more about this pretty cool machine. And thanks for watching me today. And let's go out and get all crazy.
Thanks, Cathy. Once again, that was a great presentation. Don't forget to click on the link to download Cathy's guide on that incredible project. Now, every once in a while, a machine's introduced to the industry that really offers high performance at a great value, and that's the Baby Lock Vesta. Not only is it a great sewing and quilting machine, but it also is an incredible embroidery machine. The embroidery features include a hoop that's larger than 10 by 6, and it has a wonderful color touchscreen. And look at this beautiful embroidery. Plus, it removes the jump stitches, and it even has a special software program that sends your design via Wi-Fi right to the machine. Now, that's not all though. For a sewing machine, it has the automatic fabric sensor that senses fabric from heavy denim to sheer fabric to working with elastic or even a ribbing on a collar like a t-shirt knit. But quilting features, it actually will sew in different directions. We have some designs that are incredible for going down the sashing border. It has an automatic 1/4 inch so you can do your piecing, plus all kinds of wonderful decorative stitches. So as you see, this is an incredible sewing, quilting, and embroidery machine. Now, we have a very special buy on this machine. This machine has a manufacturer suggested list price of $59.99. But right now, it's on sale for $39.99, and we're including free shipping across the country, as well as interest-free financing is available. I want to make a very special offer for those who are watching Sewing Tech Talk with Cathy, and that is with a mystery bonus. Why is it a mystery bonus? Well, I don't have a lot of them, but I want to make sure those who are contacting me, all you have to do is mention Cathy, our Sewing Tech Talk with Cathy, and I have this bonus value that is incredible. So give us a call at 1-800-865-9664 and discover how easy it is to get an incredible sewing, quilting, and embroidery machine. Bye for now.